Have you ever worked really hard on something and were convinced that there was a certain path laid out for you, only for life to freaking derail you? That's what happened to today's guest. His name is Abel Hart. He is a Philadelphia-based singer, songwriter, producer. And despite winning shows like Songland on NBC, to write the Jonas Brothers hit song Green Light, his music being used in hit shows like Love Island on CBS, and his own music popping off on TikTok and Instagram, this was originally not the plan for him. See, Abel Hart originally dedicated his life to be a U.S. Olympic snowboarder, but after a really serious injury, well, he was left refinding his purpose. He's now using his platform to not only build fans for his music, but also spread the message of spirituality in his content. In this conversation, you're going to hear how he got back up from a major career shift, how to honor the innate spark of talent, but also work your blessed booty off, and a little bit about manifesting in the frequency of music. My friends, this is pretty unconventional.
I exhausted every excuse, external, for why I wasn't where I wanted to be. And those are the moments that I live for, yet I never know when they're going to happen.
Manipulation means the action of manipulating something in a skillful manner.
In a skillful manner. Thank you. I'm so glad that just freaking happened right now.
But was that intentional? Did you know you were doing that? Man, scrolling through Instagram, I was trying to figure out who you were. Trying to figure out who is this guy. I mean, obviously you're super talented, you got a lot of charisma and so forth, but you also have a lot of depth in the stuff that you're doing, and you're saying some stuff we need to talk about a little bit more. Energy, intention, that there's a lot more underneath the surface than sometimes we think that there is. And I think it's really badass, dude, that you're using your talent and your skill to not only entertain people, but also make a big ass difference in this world. So Abel Hart joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. Tell us a little bit a backstory, because I saw that you were a professional snowboarder at one point, and I don't think I've ever talked to a snowboarder before, so I'm pretty pumped about this. So tell me that story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, thank you for having me. We were briefly talking before this, and I was telling you how much I love to get the opportunity to be able to have conversations like this. So I appreciate you having me on here. So I started off, snowboarding, there it came. You mentioned talent briefly in the beginning, introduction as well. My definition of talent is just hours and hours and hours and hours of beating at your craft. Like, at least it is for me. I try and speak as much from me, myself, and I statements as possible, just because that's my experience, and I can only hope that it can resonate with the right person it's meant to, right? I can't, as much as it's hard sometimes, I just want to convince everyone, because I want everyone to feel happy, and to feel, or at least like their fullest self, right? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what most of us are striving for, right? But it's like, if you're also always striving for it, it's always there in front of you. So then how are you ever supposed to attain it? And you could really only attain it truthfully from within, but we're trying to seek so many things externally.
Lord Jesus, you're already spitting fire today. Golly.
This is definitely my passion. This is something that, and I know you'll find me, you'll have to pull me back sometimes for sure.
No, go.
You'll ask me one question, it's supposed to be about something, and it's going to always lead into some sort of life. That's just what it is. I'm realizing it now within the last maybe like 6 months to a year. I've always talked about this, every time I go on a live or I talk about things on social media, you would think it would be for music. You would think that's what I do, but it's always about life. It's always about these things. But I believe, and I think, and I'm coming, these are like all new thoughts for me as of recent that I'm spewing right now as well. I believe that the reason for that is I know for me personally how bad of a hole I was continuously putting myself in. Now that there's so much weight behind that statement in itself, right? Because I exhausted every excuse, external, for why I wasn't where I wanted to be, or why I was where I was supposed to be. It was like, well, it's because of this, it's because of this external thing, or this person did this, or else this would have happened. Or like, I can't, I don't need to do this right now. I could do this. This is how I just came up with like tons of, they're just excuses,
Where'd that pressure come from?
Definitely internal. I don't think, maybe my dad, as much as, and I say that nicely, my parents, I'm very fortunate, I will say. My parents have always been super, super supportive. My mom took out like a second job to be able to like take me to get a ski lift, ticket when I first, that was your first question, snowboarding. that was something that I feel, we were talking about talent. That's something that I feel I was talented
Mm.
at. Anything like physical sports, that just made sense. Like I could pick it up. But the reason that I like to like pull back on the word talent for what people see now is because I don't want it to discourage someone that could just see it and be like, "Oh, like, of course, you know, like obviously you're like just like wicked talented."
But you're
And
drawn to something for a reason. Like there had to be some little inkling. I believe in calling. I believe it. I
Mhm.
believe like there's like this thing inside of you that like hints towards something, and something hinted you towards like physical sports and is hinting you towards music. And yeah, you can get better at it, but there's still a spark there that you have, and whether you want to call it a talent, but it's something innate that I think was given to you.
Yeah. My dad was in music. Like I grew up with my father who was a musician. My mom as a baby would take me in the clubs to watch him perform, and I would always be around him. He was always making
Mm,
music, but I never, maybe subconsciously wanted to do it, but it was never something I was ever gonna
mm,
like seek out and do. Again, now looking back, I know it was purely based out of insecurities. And still, there's times where I'm like, it's been a long journey as far as the insecurity route goes. But yeah, sometimes I also
mm.
say when things are so close to you, you tend to neglect like the possibilities of certain things. There's just in front of you, it's just a normal thing, but to someone
Yeah,
else, bro, like do this,
yeah,
and it just wasn't like that for me. I was just kind of grew up with it, and he was like that. My dad's he's a workaholic for sure, but he loves what he does. But there's also a statement in that, right? It's like people tell you, well, if you love what you do, you don't have to work a day in your life. Well, that's not necessarily true. There's still things in which you love to do that you necessarily don't like doing. That's just
mm,
what it is, right? Everyone within everything in life, it's like there's always something that comes with it. But I think it's not the best idea to focus on those things. Like these are the things I don't like and wish I love. It's like
yeah,
I love this so much. Everything else is just like I'm so fortunate and grateful to be able to just do this. Like all
yeah.
the other stuff just allows for more gratitude for the appreciation of that one thing. But yeah, I mean, I know music wasn't like that for me, right? So I traveled and I competed in snowboarding, and that made sense. And then I'll fast track that because it is a big part of my story, but it's also such a big part in the other things that I think have so much more weight for me to talk
Mm.
about in hopes to connect with other people. Yeah, I traveled, and then long story short, I was injured. And mind you, any
Young, you
extreme,
were like 15, right?
yeah, and any extreme sport, any sport, for that matter, comes with its injuries. But definitely extreme sports, it's kind of just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
another week I broke this. Oh, it's another week I broke this. I broke this. It'd be a shorter list to tell you all the things that I haven't broken. But my back was definitely a big one, and it put me out, and that was my purpose, right? I was going to snowboard. Didn't even matter. I could live on a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and I could just snowboard every single day. Like pure, just like passion. I just love being on the mountain, and just especially, I think I got that drive that you asked a little about earlier. Why am I like
Yeah.
this? From training, I think paired with my parents are
Mm.
very hardworking, and we could go on the topic of hardworking because it's funny now. I sit back, like I
Yeah,
actually
because you're all
work.
about manifestation now, so
Yeah, and I
it's
also work way less and I see more results, but we could get we
ooh,
could get
let's talk
into
about that
that.
later. Nope.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a huge thing. But so I definitely get that from my parents as far as like drive and work ethic. And my mom's always worked a job. My dad's been an entrepreneur, so my mom needed to support the family in that facet as far as healthcare and having kids. And I also have a
Mm.
sister. We're like almost just about 10 years apart, so there's a
Oh,
big
wow.
gap there. But I
Yeah.
was always traveling, snowboarding. I was injured, and then I say I got the case of like the efforts at a young age for sure. I lost
Mm.
my purpose. Like that's my
Yeah.
purpose in life. This is what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do. And if I could just live in a cabin, it doesn't even matter. There's no external thing, like because I'm doing this,
Mm.
kind of like in which you love to do that some sense that you don't necessarily like doing. Like you don't like
Mhm.
breaking bones, you don't like sometimes training, you have to wake up super early, you have to do this. But
Right.
honestly, like purely, I loved it made me be all the stuff that I necessarily didn't like doing, it made me love it 10 times more because of the
Mm.
results that I would see from it. And now, mind you, I didn't think like this back then. It was so subconscious, but I think it was so interconnected with me and my purpose and just being on this planet, right? And I was very fortunate to have that at a young age. And then unfortunately, the main injury that I had took me away from that out of external
Mm.
circumstances. I didn't make those decisions. Like I wasn't like, yeah, I'm gonna get super injured and not be able to do what I love. Just happened. And I got the case of what I said was the efforts, F this, like if I can't do what I love, I don't want to do anything. I'm not even,
Mm.
what else am I supposed to do? I'm not going to work a normal job, right? You come from like the extreme
That's a lot of
sports.
heavy thoughts for a teenage boy, though, too. Can you think about it? Because that, you know, a lot of kids are kind of just living their life and doing their thing. But for you to have that kind of existential crisis at a really young age, I mean, damn.
Yeah, I mean, I was with a team after snowboarding and then training and then getting better and better. I would travel with a team, so the team would have like a traveling tutor. So I didn't go to normal school. I did
Your
for like a
life.
semester, a semester. So the
Yeah.
public school, I would only go for a semester. And I always felt, you talk about imposter syndrome. I would always go into school for that semester before I started traveling. And everyone was like, oh, he's going to be going to the Olympics, the X Games, to all these things. I remember they like, I was like that kid that would just show up for a few weeks and then would go travel to do that, which was very fortunate to be able to do. But I felt so insecure and not good enough, and a lot of imposter syndrome around all of that. I was like, like just very, very. So then when I had lost all that, then it almost seemed like then it was an automatic failure, And then you talk about that with then the recovery rate at the end of the day, could I have had that injury and then recovering through the next year and everything else? But two things. One, the finances, like how expensive it was. And my parents weren't able, and then the time frame, like in that time frame that I was injured, in the progression of the sport. Like if you go back then and look at the progression of the sport now, people are doing the most ridiculous things that like it's crazy human beings can even do, And then at that point as well, that time span when I was getting better, I could see, like looking back, just the toxic mentality that started to bubble and spew in my brain, as far as the F it's, F this, like I don't want to do anything. And I went back to public school, started associating with the wrong people, places, and things.
Yeah.
And if you look at frequency and all of those things, the reason that happened, and mind you, everyone, this is not to talk bad about anyone else. Everyone's in their own, right? They're on their own journey. But the reason I connected with those people is because they were also on that frequency, like on that
100%.
mentality of effort, and I got to go to school, and these are the things, let's do drugs, this, you know what I mean? So it was the external thing, right? Because we have these conversations too, as far as whether it's drugs or most people in this world have a vice, something. Very few are just like, I'm going to work and do this. I don't like it, but it's
that's
great.
their vice.
And that's awesome. If there's people out there that are like that,
yeah.
Like the one thing that I feel like those people, though, they will not have the understanding and gratitude towards the other side. But people want to say it's the problem. You have a gambling problem, you have a drug problem, you have a drinking, whatever it is. It's not the problem. I know for me and my story, and I'm not condoning it at all. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here.
No,
like
I
that,
believe that.
right? It's not to like, whoa, those things, right? Gambling, drugs, whatever the case. That's not right. I'll finish my statement. It's a temporary solution to a permanent problem being a spiritual malady being the lack, the void that you fill on the inside that you seek externally. Yet when you seek it externally, it's only temporary. That's it, And then we think it is always that one. Oh, I remember the first time I felt like this, it filled that void, but it's only temporary. And then we're forever seeking it externally until you realize the only way to find it is internally, from within. It's like, well, how do I do that? It's like the journey of life.
When did that revelation hit you?
I wish sooner, but a long time. Like I spoke about earlier, I had to exhaust every excuse. I had to exhaust everything. It's like, no, it's because of this. Like if I wasn't in the car with this person at this time, I wouldn't went to jail. Or this, if I did this, all of it was me. So I had to continuously hit rock bottom. And like all of it was on me. I think there's so much, there's a lot of fear behind that. It's like, oh, if everything's on me, like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here. There's so much fear behind it, but I think there's also so much beauty behind it once you actually realize the truth behind it. You are the cause and the effect of all your life decisions and the outcome. It's just hard for people to sit with when they're currently where they don't want to be. And it's real and it's tough. And I experience it. And there's a lot of things you might hear me talk about throughout this. I'm spewing a lot of new things that I'm experiencing. The proud thing is a weird one for me. Not recently, but proud. Yeah, because it was like, oh, like be proud. Like, well, I'm going to affect someone else. Someone's going to be like, oh, you have this or you. But like, I have to sit with the fact that only thing that I know, and I do this, whether it's like talk about setting an intention or anything else before having conversations like this or anything I post on social media. It's like, what's my intention behind anything? Is it as a malintent or to hurt anybody or to raise anybody's blood pressure in any facet outside of a positive effect, like laughter? It's not, so at the end of the day, if anyone's going to say anything, I also pair that with the fact that hurt people. There's nothing that I could do. It's out of my control. Like the serenity prayer is the ultimate thing, right? Please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? It's like, but the last part is the hardest. Like the wisdom to know the difference between the things we can change and we can't change, because we're wrapped up in life trying to control the things we can't, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I wish it came sooner. But it was rock bottom after rock bottom, after treatment, after getting locked up, after being just like over and over and over and over again, right? The definition of insanity.
But somebody had to introduce, like, man, you have like Esther Hicks on your profile and you're talking about the frequency of abundance and energy, man. Like, that didn't hit my radar until just a few years ago. And it's not talked about right now. Like, so it was in a book, or did your parents into that? I mean, like, where did you get exposed? Like, okay, this dream crashed down. I'm struggling, trying to find my identity again, not hanging around crowds and stuff. And now fast forward and, you're teaching people about manifesting stuff. I mean, you got to fill in the gaps for me there, man, because that's quite a leap.
I mean, really, it's a simple answer, and most things are, right? It's, YouTube.
YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, we grow up in the best day and age. I say this all the time. It's tough for a lot of people to hear, because in order to execute any of it, it's on you.
Preach.
Right.
Preach.
And it's tough, but I also try and have an excessive amount of empathy for that. But I believe, you can't jam it down anyone's throat, even though it's like that's the best intention. Like, trust me, you ever be around someone, it's usually like parents or family members or a loved one in the relationship. They're trying, like, listen, like, if you would only do this, but yet those are the people that you want to listen to the least. You're like, oh, you got your own problems. You're trying to tell me what to do. But the thing is, it's like, everyone's on their own journey. And I had to sit with that, especially after like doing a lot of this. I want to like help someone, and I'll see certain comments and I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's not like what you're seeing it, right? Because reality is what we choose to believe to be true. That's it. I could sit here and be like, I have a beautiful house here. I could be like, like, I need better than this.
That's so true.
It's all, I mean, anything, it's like all what we choose to believe true. That's what reality is. And you talk about manifesting, and you brought it up briefly, and I'll definitely go off into that. But I want to finish the first thing, because my brain will go a million different ways.
Sure.
But it was probably, to answer your question, as far as when did I kind of have this realization, I didn't until I did. And when I did, it was probably, I was just willing to take the advice of anybody that knew better than I, and that had at least gone through something similar, because as human beings, we also try to differentiate ourselves and tell everything else that I could see how like our situations like that, but it's not like, you don't know what like I've been through, or it's worse. Like, oh, I'm not that bad. Like the reason, okay, I get that you went through that and now you're here, but like, I can't relate to that. I'm not that bad, or it's not as worse, right? There's a million different plausible excuses. It all goes back to that. But yeah, I was just I couldn't trust myself. And until, I don't know, I was sent away somewhere for who knows what amount of time. And I just started listening. I was like, oh my gosh, like I ended up here again. It was like that. It's so crazy, because it's not like it was the first time I had that realization. I just had an excuse the last time.
Just the right time. I mean, it was just a time.
It was just a time thing. It was like, I'm literally in the same situation. This just happened 15 times before.
Yeah.
Like and then someone started to talk about the things that, not as heavy as I'm talking about them, but talking about these things. I pretty much like, it's all on us. You can't trust yourself. You can't trust your brain, like how you've been programmed. And and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't trust myself. Like, should I drink apple juice? Like, I mean, like, and it sounds silly, right? But I didn't know, like, I was so, and it definitely is silly, but I was so just like willing. All I knew is that I didn't want to feel the way I felt every single day. And I was willing to do anything not to. Right. It was that deep for me. Mind you, it was that deep for me the time before, and the time before, the time before. It was just until like it just clicked. I was like, if I'm just truly honest with myself, the only reason I'm back here is because of me, because of everything that I've done over the last time it freaking happened. It was like perfectly aligned, where everything from the last time it happened to this time of me realizing it, there was no interjection of anybody else but me. Like, so I didn't have, even if I wanted to have another excuse, there was literally no excuse. So I like I said earlier, I had exhausted all excuses, and it only allowed me to sit with the reality that I had created for myself. And then I just started taking the advice and YouTubing of other people that just like knew better than me, because I apparently don't know anything, you know, and it was a hard, it's a
Let
hard
me
realization.
push on that a little bit. And I haven't figured this out, my friend, so I'm navigating it, but thinking
Hey,
about
yeah, yeah, it's fine.
how do you take personal responsibility and use that as a empowering thing of like, it's me versus being like, it's freaking always me, and using that as a tool of like self-hatred. There's such a line there, you know, of like, this is always on my plate, empowering versus, you know, why do I always keep ended up in these cycles and feeling like there's something wrong with you?
No, totally. And I mean,
You know?
that's also a really great question. And there is, you said there's a line there. I mean, for one, balance, we'll go into balance later, but balance is the
We
key
got a
to.
lot of rabbit trails to go
I've
down.
read the book on there is no such thing as balance. It all means the same. You successfully do
Yeah.
something all the time over here, and then you do it over there. Well, how am I supposed to have balance of any of that when I spend all my time over here, but then I jump to here? It's like what's work, work-life balance isn't a real thing either. It's a lot of things that I bought into, especially even through this. Like once I started to have this realization, but how would someone be empowered by the fact of realizing that it is on them?
Yeah.
I mean, that itself, I feel, is an empowering statement, but like I also spoke on earlier, it's also very scary. It's very scary to be like, holy like the whole reason I'm at where I'm at now, and this isn't where I want to be. This is like the worst position, and it's the complete opposite of what I've been shooting for. Is all on me is also a scary thing.
Guess it's the perception thing you mentioned earlier. What perception
It's
do you have?
perception, but here's the thing: the biggest thing is the awareness. If you realize that you are not there, it's a competition, but you are tenfold above other people on this journey of life, right? Because I do believe, just why I love having these conversations and I try to hop on as many podcasts and put this stuff out there as much as possible, because I do believe once you have the awareness and you have seen the change in your life, I feel it's a bit of a disservice not to speak on these things potentially to help someone else. That's just what I believe. I also know it's crazy, but it also is like the most selfless way of being selfish because of what I get from it. This conversation, I mean, I'm not making money. We're just like genuinely having a conversation. Yeah. Also realize as well that the meat of life is the moment. Is this? I say this all the time. Is this the conversation we're having right now?
Yeah.
It's just so wrapped up in the human brain of all the other things that are going on Earth, on social media, on everything else that keeps us from the present moment. But that's a whole other topic of conversation. But there is, back to the main point, I feel good about bringing things back. I'm normally not like this, or not. I mean, I'm all over the place all the time. But see, I say that, I'm projecting it. I like this. I think that's the other thing, right? It's a benefit. I like.
It's a gift. It's a
It charges me
gift.
up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for so long. You know what I mean? Like the only reason, again, I remember, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember times when I couldn't even fully form sentences. Like, I mean, just like couldn't. I just like, I want to talk to somebody that, like, what am I trying to say? Like, I mean, like just lost it. I was thinking about that this morning. And I was like, holy moly, because I'll have these conversations and I watch back and I edit anything you see that's out on social media. I edit everything, right? Even to like the music stuff. And I'll watch some stuff and I'll just have like some realizations sometimes. I'll just be like, holy moly. And I had that this morning. I was like, I remember when I just like couldn't. It was a scary moment because I've always felt like I could fluently speak.
Yeah.
But when I just couldn't. And I'll find those moments. I think there's also some magic, right? Then you look at like vice versa. When I have experience, so I'm a big car guy, and I just had this experience recently, and I believe with manifesting, like if you could window watch, if you could touch it, if you could go, if it's the house, sit in the driveway, get in the car, go to the dealer, whatever it may be, go to the shopping mall and look at the clothes, whatever it is, get it, touch it, feel it. What's it feel like, right? That's the point of manifest. It's the emotion derivative from what that is, and then bring it back in the present moment, right? So I just had this experience as well on the other end of it, where I couldn't speak. I didn't know, like, I've been a big car guy, and this is like, something that's just such a bucket list thing for me, just like supercars. And I'm just, my manager and I, who maybe you spoke to briefly, but we just grew up car guys, like working on, I couldn't build an engine, but just working on cars and doing stuff. That's all. I almost did that before music. I was like, maybe I'll work on cars. I went there, took the test. I was like, I don't know how any of this works. I was like, no way, my brain doesn't work like that, but it wasn't meant to be. So I had that experience, and we were driving supercars. I couldn't even speak. This was my first time. The reason I never had done it before is because I was like, no, if I get in one, I'm going to get one. Not that that's a bad thing, but I was just never in the position to do that. right? But now fast forward, we were doing that. I literally felt, and I do all the time, I also say this, I literally feel like I'm tripping all the time. You know, this is your first time meeting me. I don't know your perception of you. Is like, cuckoo, let's end this early. You know, I have no, yeah,
You don't
I
know
don't
me.
know. But I
Yeah.
feel like this, and
Mm.
tripping and hallucinogens is a big part of my story. I also, not to condone it, and I don't condone it. And if you do it, I totally believe do it with like a professional, but I don't do it, nor do I ever want to do it again. But I believe that's a big part of my story. I do believe that that was a huge part of the actual question you asked me right before this was how did I
That's
start to
so
have that
many
awareness?
people's responses to that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
My manager, I would have that conversation all the time. I was just like, oh my gosh. I remember the first time. Like, and if you could abuse that drug, the thing is you can't. Like, at least it was mushrooms for me. Other things as well, but like the mushrooms, I tried to abuse it. Not that I'm condoning that, but
Mhm.
like it affected me that much. I was like, oh my gosh. I was sitting there. I'm surprised I didn't bring this up when you earlier asked it. I don't usually like to talk a lot about drugs because I do believe everything is totally found within.
Sure.
But I feel like that now, and that's why I bring it there, right? So my first, I remember we were in a gas station parking lot, and we were there, and I was like, bro, like this is real, you know, like everything's real. Mind you, I know you're tripping in your mind's, but right, it's essentially food poisoning is all it technically really is. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like anything, we could do anything, you know, like anything in life. And this is my first time after snowboarding. I hadn't done music, done nothing else.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you could do anything. Like anything you want to
Mhm.
do, we can do it. Like right now, let's do it. You know, what do we want to do? You know, anything. Like we're here. The
Mm.
fact that we're here, you know, I just started this almost like this gratitude, like beam is just hitting me like, oh my gosh, all these things, and we're here and we can do whatever we want. The fact that I was right before this for years after the snowboard injury, thinking of it completely opposite. Why do I have to be here? Like literally, why do I have to be here? How can I freaking get away, like not be here? Like literally as soon as possible, you know,
Mm.
without affecting someone else that I love, you know, it's like
Mhm.
that. And that was a huge thing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, everything down to the T. And I feel like that now every single day.
Mm.
There was no difference. And this is funny because my manager's wife kept saying, like, I would be so curious to see your brain right now. I was like, so would I, you know, so would
Yeah.
I. I'm so curious. I have no idea I was having the experience because that was that moment, one of those peak pivotal moments in your life where it's like you work so hard and blah, 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 and
Mm.
everything. And then really firmly having that experience. And mind you, it wasn't my car, right? It wasn't anything else. I was like, oh my God, I don't even know. I couldn't talk. I literally couldn't
Mm.
even. I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know. I still have yet to find the words. This just happened last week. But just on the polar end of how I was so in such a bad place, couldn't trust
Yeah.
myself, I couldn't even speak. On the reverse, I don't even know what I'm feeling. Right? I love it. You know, I love that. I know
Yeah.
that it's a great feeling, but I can't even put it into words. And those are the moments that I live for. Yet I never know when they're going to happen. And that's the exciting part of all of it, of life, you know?
Yeah. So, okay. You are passionate and you have such a deep conviction, maybe would be the right word, and it just oozes out of you, my friend. And what a gift. It's so beautiful. And I think what's so interesting about what you're doing now, and what I really appreciate, I've been on a storytelling kick lately of like, all right, if you have some kind of deep truths you're passionate about, framing it in a way is like so much of the art and the craft. Because to your point earlier, who wants to say like, Abel, you need to blah 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 blah, like people like clear that out. But when you can put music to it, or a skit, or some fun dances, and just have like this package that delivers the truth without people realizing that they're getting shared something
Yeah,
like
you're talking about like
that's
the mass manipulation of positivity. I mean, you know, I
I
mean
was
that's what it
thinking
is.
about it in a better way than that.
I mean, yeah, but
Yeah.
there's no other like it's because how else are you're
Mm.
trying to I mean, you're trying to get it to register with as many people as possible, but in like behind the scenes way. I don't think like manipulation has I don't know the actual definition. I have to look that up.
I don't see,
But
as you see it as
manipulation has
manipulation, that's
negative
such a
connotation.
strong word.
But it is such a strong word. I mean, so is humble, but go look up the definition of humble. It is so negative. I stopped saying that, you know, because I was like, I want to be humble. I want to be humble through all of these things. Go look up the actual definition of humble one time. It's like like lowering oneself to a bar of something.
Interesting.
It's not a
Interesting.
good definition, but societally, it's like, oh my gosh, you're so humble. You know, you're so humble. And until I realized that, I was like, I'm done saying that. But again, I would like to, that'd be the next word, manipulation, like using, is it only out of a negative? I'm just going to look it up right now. Hey Siri, what's
Yeah.
the definition of manipulation? Hey Siri, what's the definition of manipulation?
Manipulation means the action of manipulating something in a skillful manner.
In a skillful manner. Thank you. I'm so glad that just freaking
Wow.
happened right now. Not negative condensation at all, only yet societally, like I have goosebumps. That's
It's
real right there. And that's
wild.
the definition of humility. I feel like someone's gonna like figure this out and don't come knocking on my door, but it's true. So it's just a mass manipulation of positivity that you're trying to, in a skillful way, it sounds like, inject, right? Positivity without them even knowing.
But was that
And
intentional? Did you know you were doing that?
oh yeah, for sure. 150%. I mean, that was the whole thing. Before this, if you actually like deep dive into the full spectrum of Ableheart, the project, it was all negative, is very much and the reason I didn't take this down is because this has been my picture of the whole project. I was in a very bad place. I'd struggled with all sorts of things, and depression and drugs and whatever, just everything. But when I started to get better, I was like, oh, I could write about it. If I'm going to sing, I never sang before I started music production. Like to sing and to write was just like the biggest fear in my life. But I had been at that point, I told you, I finally started to get this awareness and realization. I was like, this is life or death for me. If I'm going to do this, my sister lived out in California, had this like tiny, it's like the size of this room, maybe. And she let me live on her kitchen floor. She let me live out there. And I'm so grateful for that. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to start a new project. I had a different project before. I was like, and I'm going to sing and write and then produce everything. Like I'm going to mix, master, produce, sound design, engineer, sing, and do everything. I'm going to do it. It's all on me. I started to have this realization. And I was like, but I need to set up a proper routine, because every time I don't have a proper routine and life schedule, it gets all over the place, right? So I started to do that and created like just a healthy routine as far as like physical fitness too, as well. Just like I have to run every single day and do this mile and then come back, and just really, like time scheduling, which I needed, which before was just like, I'll do whatever I want, whenever I want, and that's what it led me to over and over. So, but yeah, I knew it coming back. So the beginning of my project is I thought I could just write about things without actually carrying through the acts. I thought it, and I told myself, at least at the beginning of the project at Ableheart, it's very, very negative, and almost glorifying a lot of the things negatively. But the only reason I wrote about those things in that perspective is because I said, Ableheart, the project, my mom's always said, you're able to do anything your heart desires. So Ableheart, the full spectrum of the project is going to start with me being honest and vulnerable. These are the things I went through. The only reason there's glorification around anything negative is because, at least in my experience, it had temporarily, again, fulfilled me internally. An external thing temporarily fulfilled me internally. Someone else that was going through the same thing, mind you, I said, no, I'm good on that, bro. Like, I don't do that. The only reason this person's trying to get me on is like, bro, you don't even understand. But I didn't until I did. And it was temporary. It was fake. It wasn't real. Right. And it leads you down a hole deeper than you ever want to go, that you should just figure out on your own. Right. And go through the way of life. But that's why. So I was writing about why I would glorify those things and the experiences that I was having, yet being depressed and not wanting to be here on planet Earth, and like all of these things, right? If you actually deep dive, not to say that you will or should, but that's where it started. And then I was like, I'll start this project here. And then I wanted to start going to pop, So it's like the spectrum. So if someone took big scope out and saw the whole thing, they're like, I wanted the whole thing to be based around someone else could see it and be like, oh my gosh, if you went through this and you did that, and now you're here, I could do that too. That's all that I care about. Like from the jump, like dead up, like that's all, because that's the only reason I got into music. What really hit was like house music. I was like, oh, like I went out for the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what was going on. I was just like, I don't know what it is, but I want to be a part of whatever it is. How can I do this? If I could do this, I can make other people. I need other people. I need to put other people on this. I want other people to feel how it's making me feel right now. I'm going to do that forever. Like that's what I wanted. So it was very pure for me in that sense. And then experience, I felt like it was also like a therapeutic way for me to express the way that I was feeling inside without actually carrying through those acts in real life. I was like, I could talk about these things, but it's almost like I'm venting and I don't have to carry through doing them over and over. So that helped a little bit. But unfortunately, what I realized at the beginning of that project, all I was really doing was manifesting those things back into my life tenfold, because I ended up worse before. The first EP is called Drugs, and it goes through the whole story of just my experience and the things that I was feeling prior to that. But I thought just about writing about the past things that I had gone through, it would release me, and I could move forward and then start to do pop, and then really full picture the stuff that you're probably hearing and referencing now, right? But that has, to answer your question in a long roundabout way, that has been my intention from the jump, even before, and then definitely with this, it's now like such a great manipulative.
Have you read Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth?
No,
Yeah, that's
no.
kind of where I was leading with this because I'm only a little bit into it, but it reminds me of artists like you because his whole thing is like throughout history, we've wrapped deep spiritual truth within the context of myth and story so people can consume it. And I just feel like your art is a little bit of an example of that. I wanted to press into the energy of music, and it's not to get, I'm not a musician, so you're gonna have to talk to me just like a regular person, but I was doing a deep dive on Aniko recently, and she was talking about how, the music, the different vibrations, and that there's something energetically being exchanged with the music that you hear. And I was like, shut up, that's so cool. And then when I afterwards found you, and you went through a song that you made with the energy or the frequency of abundance, that
Mhm.
freaking blew my mind, dude. Like, where did you get that idea? And can you kind of just walk us through what that means? And then in a way where people are like, we're not just talking about shit over here. Like, this is some real science stuff.
There's a multitude of ways to do it. What made me start to do it, I've thought about it for a long time. I'm like, as far as putting it in music, it's never been as much in alignment because I was doing pop stuff, and that was kind of the first stuff that was trending and having like a little bit of a virality streak, which I was super happy for because it took me away from the negative stuff. As
Yeah.
much as I was like, oh, like it's kind of like I have to do that because that's the only other stuff that could translate, and other people. But I didn't really realize it was just all negative, and then I'm also putting negative out there into the world, and
Right.
which I definitely am thankful for my manager for, because he's my friend, so we grew up together. He's always been trying to get me to do this and sing, and I'd be like, no, all right, because I had insecurity. But it was something I was telling myself for a long time. What if I took all the things and I meditate every single day? That's my part of my daily routine, my stretch and meditation, morning practice, my nighttime practice. So what if I just took some of these frequencies and like actually mix them, like, and put them into the music? And then also on top of that, it's like, how can you level up? Also on top of that, how can I then have affirming statements?
So
Because
cool.
you are what you focus. You talk about, so it's like paired with like law of attraction, and you are what you focus most on. All of these things, and maybe someone doesn't even know it at the time, but my excuse was like, I'm just going to make sure the beats hit hard. I'm sure people still listen to the radio, but not as much as before. It's very streaming platforms, but they play the same song. You couldn't, the first time you heard it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst song I ever heard. And then you hear it little by little. You hear it in that car over there across the street. Over here,
So true.
subconscious starts going in your head. Then you didn't even realize like that you're listening to that song, over and over. And that's intentional, right? That's a marketing tactic. It's like a real thing. That's why they do that. I was like, perfect in alignment of actually straying from pop. So the negative stuff kind of went into pop, and then talk about love stuff, and then kind of would have some sensual stuff, a little bit of R&B stuff. It was kind of just perfect. And I was like, what if I never wanted to do hip hop, I was like, I love it. I like absolutely love it. But I was so fear-based. I'm like, I'm not blonde very much right now, but I was like, I would negatively tell myself I'm a blonde hair, blue-eyed kid. Like, what am I gonna like make like hip hop? Like, what are people gonna say?
Yeah.
Even though that's the one thing that I love the most. I was and that's what's held me back the most. I mean, honestly, in life is what other people's judgment of me is going to be my whole life, so worried about me, myself, and and what other people are going to think and how I'm going to come up. And it was just holding me back. And I would sit like, just like all of that. It just held me back so much in life. But it was at the perfect time to answer your question. I was at the perfect time. I was just like, I started to do it. We tried it with like the first song, which was Too Good. And yeah, Charles was like, I think like manipulating me in the way where I was like, I want to do hip hop, like, but I don't want it to be like, I want it to be like the beats to be a specific way, because I produce everything as well. So it's like, I want it to be a specific way and to hit hard, but it's not like rap. I was like, I just want it to be true to myself. And we went back and forth in a conversation. It's like, what if it's just like essentially affirming all the stuff you talk about when you probably should be talking about music? Just write that,
Preach.
Yeah, it was like that, and that's kind of how it started. And then after I put out a few songs like that, I was seeing like, oh my gosh, like people are on this wave, like people are on this wave of like positivity. I'm not the only one really, and I knew I wasn't, but it just really hit in a massive way. you know, and kind of has virality streak. And then I was like, what happens now if you take it to the next level? And I start mixing like frequencies on top of the affirmations and all the stuff I was doing. So that's how that came about.
And then, do you have a few more minutes? I know we're at the top of the hour.
Hey, you
but
guys
I
talk
got
about this
some-
stuff. We could
Okay.
go to.
The decision for you to be independent, and I don't know if this is like a statement, like I'm going to be independent, or if this is just a season, but I mean, you've had some awesome wins, and
It's been a
had-
conscious decision to answer. Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
like even like the award you got with the Jonas Brother thing and winning that, like, damn, dude, why? What's the independent thing? I know there's a reason. You're all about intention and stuff. So what's the intention with like blazing your own trail here?
I'm a big believer and always have been off of feeling, you know, especially at the point now, a lot of these things are happening in my life. I'm having these experiences and my dreams are coming true and pop, 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 right?
Yeah.
Now, mind you, before any of that, I've had that awareness. Now I'm working on myself and I start to realize, oh, I don't know, you know, I shouldn't trust myself here, and start to realize like your flaws just as much as the positive things about you, which I think are just super, like you need to know both of those things. How are you ever supposed to move forward? There were so many times then when amazing things would happen, it just didn't feel in alignment. Like it was that deep for me as well. I was
I
just
love
like,
that answer.
it just didn't
I
feel in
love that.
alignment. Now my ego, you know,
Sure.
it was a
100%.
different conversation, and not the
Yeah.
narcissistic sense of ego, right? Just the ego of self, and even a little bit of the other, you know, like you've worked so hard and you've done all these things, wants to say, you know, otherwise, always wants to have like a part of the conversation. Like I do, I make sure to have that awareness with a lot of things moving forward. I'm like, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Is it for the right reasons? And maybe sometimes it's not in a bad way, but maybe sometimes it's not the best choice, but the reason I'm doing it outweighs it being the best choice, you
Mhm.
know? So I think the same thing, like the only reason that I could give an example to have that make sense, I didn't need to go into this place. I don't need a 4-bedroom house. It's very simple. Do I want it? Yes. Have I treated myself to anything nice in the last decade of whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I have nice car, but like, no, I want it. It's very simple. This is like the place of empowerment that I've been coming into in like the last, I mean, this is like such a new concept, like not concept, but such a new thing for me to
Yeah.
like step into that place, not the narcissistic and egotistical sense, but like I deserve it, because I'm like, I don't deserve it. This is what, no, we just do this,
Yeah, I feel that. I get that.
you know? So I asked my mentor, like, what should I do? Like, I want to, it's like a bigger place. I could be able to do this and that. I had more room and I feel like way more, you know, expanded, and I wouldn't feel so confined. And his mentors like laughed. He's like, well, you don't plan on making any less money, do you? You know? And it was
Yeah.
that deep. And that resonated with me. And that was right when I was like choosing and like having the decision. I was like, oh, like, do I really need it? Like, do I really deserve it? Do I really, all these things that like past programming wanted to bring up into me, like into that present moment. And I did it. And because then I did that, then all these other things recently just pop, pop, pop. And this other big things happen. It's like, blah, 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 like everything, because that feeling outweighs anything else. But yet there's the balance within that, because I could be like, oh, I feel so good, I'm gonna go buy another one, or I'm gonna go do another, you know, it's like, it's just the balance of it, right? And that's tricky sometimes, right? The Jordan Peterson become a monster and learn how to tame it, have the awareness, then learn like the definition, like learning when you can control, like when you should do something and when you shouldn't. That's been it's been a big thing for me recently, and it's been nuts. Like it really has, and I'm so grateful. I talk about my story a lot, but I was like, I need to start making edits, because I've been filming. By the way, everything I'm talking about in my past and everything else, I've filmed the whole thing. Like the whole thing, knowing it's going to happen, having firm belief. I filmed the whole thing, talking to the camera. Like I know I'm here right now, but it's not going to be like this forever.
Wow.
I can post all that stuff now. I already knew, right? You talk about
Wow.
manifestation, being in alignment. I worked at a job I couldn't freaking stand, but I told myself, I just faked it, right? Why would I want to fake it? Someone would tell me, trust me, just fake the feeling and just do what you like. I don't want to fake it. Like if it's BS, like I want to feel it. I want to experience it. That's it. When I didn't even have something I was going after, I was like, why am I going to do that when I have the opportunity to now go after something? And then I took it back. I was like, what if I film everything? And then when it happens, like, that's the one thing that I wish that I could have visually seen, you know, all the interviews that I would watch, all the things that I watch on YouTube and learn. I wish there was something that I could see, like, oh my gosh, not only did, and it's not about like, oh, he called it type of thing, but like this whole time he's going through this, I could see the BS he's going through here, and I could see all of these things, and I know where he's at now, but oh my gosh, it's like it's predicted. Like it's like you projected and you,
It'd be
yeah.
helpful for a lot of people because
And
there's
that
so
was
much
my
hope
purpose.
in that.
Yes.
There's hope in it. I have a final question for you, but before then, dude, I just want to really acknowledge the intention that you put behind your work. You don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, I think you'd probably pop quite a bit without the, the goods in it, the truth, the honesty, because I mean, I know you don't like the word talent, man, but you have it. You have it, whatever it is. But thank you for selflessly, not only using this stuff to change your life, but also generously sharing it with a whole bunch of folks, because media is, you said that your intro to everything was YouTube. Mine was podcasts. That's why I have one, because I was in a really dark spot and a freaking stranger on this phone told me things I'd never heard before. And, fast forward now, this is what I do. So you are doing that for other people. And it's just been a thrill to get to know you. Your energy is like next level. I feel like super
It's a lot.
energized now. No, it's a freaking gift. It's a gift. But before I get our final question, which is written on my wall, tell our folks where you want to direct them to.
Well, first off, I appreciate you saying all those very
I mean it.
amazing things. I really do appreciate it. But yeah, anything that would be Abel Hart would be just at Abel Hart or at Abel Hart Music. The easiest probably for all the things, so you don't have to go to all the apps, would just be Google Abel Hart would be the easiest. But yes, ABLE, like you're able to do whatever your heart, HEART. So it's Abel Hart. Sometimes people spell it backwards, but it's cool.
People are funny. All that'll be linked up in the show notes. Very last question. There's a quote that's written on my wall from this cowboy out in Texas. His name's James Victory. And he has a cowboy hat and a big long mustache. And it's really important that you know that. Okay.
Okay. I got the visual.
Okay. He says, the things that made you weird as a kid make you great today. And I love it. So let's pick something really weird about you as a little boy that maybe you resisted at first, maybe you thought was negative, and now you embrace as a man and know it makes you great.
Personality. That's my personality all day. I don't even have to think about that one. Yeah. Like I was very reserved, wouldn't even be it. I was completely shut off, just from, I'm just gonna, it's crazy. I was watching a thing recently, this whole like deep diving into old content, and it's just maybe be like, oh my gosh, like I'm literally a different person, literally a different person. But in order to live a life that you've always wanted, you have to become someone completely different. It's just that simple, But yeah, I just wouldn't really talk. And I remember there was a camera. We used to film a lot of stuff. And there's a camera, like I really wouldn't say anything, like that's what I would do is, that's it, just very like reserved wouldn't even be the word. I was just completely shut off. And I know internally, because I know how I was feeling and what I was thinking at the time. But yeah, it would be personality to answer your question. Just if I'm too much, if I'm like this, then what? Like I don't know how people are going to react to that. But yeah, until I've from the last decade, I mean, I've spent, and this isn't a boohoo me thing, it's out of my choice. I spent 90 and still do like 99.9% time by myself. I do.
Yeah.
And I think it's a weird thing for a lot of people to hear. That's by choice. It also doesn't mean that I don't have, I mean, I don't have many friends, but it's like, I'm very sacred of my energy. And I believe I'm on this planet for a huge, huge purpose. I totally do. And I'm not willing to risk that. And like the message that I potentially could spread and help someone else to risk it, because like, I just want to like not have a friend, but like I just want to like go out and do whatever, like I don't party, I don't do any of that. I've been very fortunate, like I've done all that stuff, and it's like it was cool at the time or whatever, but it doesn't have the massive ROI that like all of this does for me. Like it just doesn't. So yeah, it would be personality to answer your question. And now I just feel I know myself. Because of the 99.9% time that I spent by myself in the last over a decade, I got to know myself, which was the first thing that I have ever experienced. And I love myself, and I think that was a huge one for me to be able to get to. You know, it's not always easy. I wake up, I like high five myself, even though I believe in the Mel Robbins high five thing. I totally do.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yep. Yeah. So, you know, we're on the same wave, but yeah. So it's
Yeah.
amazing to get that. What about you? What's yours? I'll interview you now.
Something weird about me as a kid. I deeply felt things for people. Very, very empathetic heart
Empathetic,
to, yeah. And I used to be a therapist. So like that was kind of like my vein and my vibe and stuff. And it can really put you in a dark place, and it can also get you ran over by a lot of folks because like I'll like die for you, dude. You know what I'm saying? And so reframing that now of like, that doesn't make me weak. It makes me so strong because I get what's going on in the room, you know, when other people can't. But yeah, my feels, man, I embrace my feels now.
I love it. Yeah,
I've
it's
never had
amazing.
anyone ask me that question back. Thanks. That was cool.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I was genuinely curious too, as well. Figure switch it on you, but I was genuinely curious.
Thanks.
Mhm,
I
yeah.
appreciate that.